Dr. Kate Edwards, and I'm your host. Today, I'm very excited to introduce my guest. Her name is Dr. Shawn Haywood. She's a liberated living expert. And here she is.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
You're welcome. I'm really excited for you to be here.
Thank you.
Today, we're going to talk about perfectionism. And perfectionism is something that I've absolutely struggled with. I like to call myself a recovering perfectionist. And many of you probably have struggled with this as well. So tell us a little bit about perfectionism. What is it?
Sure. So I too am a recovering perfectionist. I love that term. So perfectionism really is something that stems from when we're young. It usually starts when children are very young. It can be a product of temperament, of environment, typically a combination. And what it really comes down to is a constant striving for more, better, and it in its essence, it does not allow anyone to ever feel like anything is complete or that it's good enough or that you can just stop and be. So it has this component of a constant striving without an ability to be content or feel content or have a sense of peace.
What I find interesting is when you said, so I work with Shawn on a regular basis, and I recommend you to everybody I know. Because I feel, you're welcome. Because I feel like Shawn has helped me a lot. And I didn't actually know that I needed to work on anything until, everything in my life kind of came to a stopping point. And I wrote about this in my book, and actually the first episode I talked to you guys a lot about how I had to make a lot of changes in my life, and Shawn has really helped me with that. But when you think about perfectionism, I never realized that I didn't know I wasn't good enough or that I was striving for more all the time. That never even occurred to me.
Right.
So how would we even know if we were in that pattern?
Right. Well, perfectionism is really interesting because most people who are natural perfectionists actually believe that it's a good thing, right?
Yes.
And we wave it around like this great banner, and we say literally, oh, I'm a perfectionist, and people think that it's this really great thing. And in the background is where the trouble begins, right? Because if you don't know that something you're putting forward is a challenge and that it's interrupting your life and that it's interrupting your relationships and your work and all of these important things in our life, then you obviously don't know to start getting in the way of it, right?
Right.
I forgot your question.
That's okay. See, nothing is perfect here. I don't care. We're both recovering. That's okay. I think really the idea is that I want people to understand or be able to recognize it in themselves and say, oh my gosh, I do that. So
Right.
What kinds of things in our life would we do if we had that issue, or if we really were a perfectionist? Yeah.
Sure. So, oh my gosh, the list here is truly endless. If you're looking for perfectionism in yourself or looking for the results or how you might know that you're struggling with perfectionism, it comes in an untold number of ways, really. It can show up in relationships, at work, in our eating, exercising in the way of withholding or over-exercising. It can be overworking in the sense that, a project is really done, but a perfectionist might put another 3, 4, 5, 6 hours into it. At home, it can look like, or at work, really, it can look like being overly critical to yourself, kind of, nitpicking, nothing is ever quite good enough or quite right, or, gosh, in my old life, I would even to the tune of the towels being folded in the right way and being irritated if they weren't folded the right way. Now I'm just glad that they're folded.
Well, I found that I did the same thing. Several things. One of the things Shawn had me do is I used to keep research journals. Do you remember this?
Yes.
So we're like, mine. I know. I used to keep a stack of research journals. Every research article that I could possibly think of that I would need to read so that I could be really good at my job. And then I would read the articles, I would put sticky notes in them, and then I would put a stack of those articles somewhere in the house. So then I would have piles of research everywhere in the house that I've already read, but I didn't want to get rid of them because I thought, what if I can't remember what I read and I need to reread it? So then I would reread the articles over and over again. And I think it hit me when you said, why? You're never going to remember everything that you read. And you don't need to remember everything you read. And I thought, what do you mean? Of course I do. How could I be good at my job if I didn't know everything? And you can't.
Right.
So one of the exercises you gave me was I had to throw away 80% of my articles and 80% of my magazines. And Brian, my husband, everybody knows who that is, was so excited.
No doubt. He's like, wow, we have a whole new house.
Right? And the truth is I don't miss those. Now that I threw them away, I don't miss them, and I'm actually glad they're gone because it was so much clutter. I mean, it wasn't, it was just in my office and on my kitchen counter, but it's great.
Right.
So that was one of the ways it showed up for me.
Sure. Well, and there's such a fine line between, actually the line isn't fine. It's a very wide pendulum swing between perfectionism and excellence. And perfectionists get really caught up in those little tiny details where excellence has so much more flow and relaxation to it. And you want to know as much as you can.
Yeah.
But then when you move over to the realm of perfectionism, it's like, there's more like a stranglehold on things, and your life feels like a stranglehold, and it's never enough, and what if, and instead of the excellent side that says, if I need to remember something, I'll look it up.
Yes, exactly.
And it will be just fine.
Mm-hmm. I think that's true. And I mean, we're not expected to know everything. How could we possibly know everything?
Right.
Another way that it showed up for me was I love to have parties at my house. And when I have parties at my house, I would spend a day, 2 days, 3 days getting ready for the party. I would make sure everything in the house was exactly where it wanted to be. So if the cleaners came, I would straighten everything after they came.
Right. We call that half-inching in my family.
Half-inching? Half-inching. Yes, exactly. And I would go around the house and fix all of the pictures and refold the towels, just like you. And I would do that, and I would do it over and over again. And Brian would say, we're ready. The party's in 2 days. And I'm like, we're not ready. Don't you see? Everything is out of place.
Right.
And I didn't realize that was perfectionism.
Right. And the piece that's kind of behind those actions is that constant anxiety.
Oh my gosh, so much anxiety.
Right? Perfectionism comes with boatloads of anxiety because if nothing is ever quite enough, then nothing is ever enough.
Right.
Right? And so that pit in your stomach where it should be a reflection of a sanctuary and our softness and our inner guidance and, this loving, compassionate space for ourselves turns into this manic, constant state of more, better, not enough, not done enough, not good enough, not skinny enough, not mom enough, not successful enough. Whatever it is, there's a constant voice in the back of the head for a perfectionist that's just constantly not enough, not enough.
Absolutely. I mean, and I've heard that voice for a long time.
Right.
And it's hard so for somebody that's been there or is there now, or even recovering like us,
Sure.
what can we start to do? I mean, what are some small things that we can do to start recognizing and moving away from it?
Mm-hmm. So that's a really great question. So a couple of ways that perfectionists can start to shift and recognize what's happening is with a couple of tools. And one, perfectionists, if you're paying attention, will start to notice polarized thinking, right? And this is a really, really major trap with perfectionists who are also tend to be very high achievers, go-getters. And with polarized thinking, we really fall into a trap of it's black or white, it's good or bad, it's right or wrong, it's pass or fail, right? It's either a travesty or it's amazing. And so for perfectionists to recognize that polarized thinking is happening is really profound. And then to start catching yourself, right, is the next step, and going, oh man, I just did that. It's either right, wrong, good, bad, success, fail thing. And start to move yourself into the gray area, which is, really where life happens anyway, right? I mean, there's so little that is objectively good, bad, right or wrong, right? In our daily life, we're not talking about, should I murder someone or not, right? Like,
Good example, Shawn.
That's good, bad, right, wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Other than that, it's, really small things that have no impact on our entire life or the way that we love or receive love or want to care about people. But it definitely interrupts how we love and care about people or receive love and care, right? So understanding polarized thinking is a really big one. The other thing that can be very helpful is taking life in terms of the 80-20 rule. And there's a ton of great books out there on the 80-20. Living the 80-20 Way is one of my favorites. And when you think about whatever it is you're doing, whether it's cleaning your house for a great party,
Right.
if you can just move yourself into 80% is fine. No one is going to be looking under my couch for a dust bunny, right?
I am. Just kidding.
Right, of course.
Shawn has a dust bunny.
Or your son might be crawling under there looking for them.
Just kidding. But you're right. You're absolutely right. No one's going to be looking at that.
Right. And so moving your mindset into 80% is plenty, right? And letting that 20% slide.
Okay. I think that that's a great thing, and I find I catch myself often, and that's one of the things I catch myself with a lot is trying to put 150% in.
Right.
And I've gotten a lot better, over the last few years or however many years we've been working together now.
For
Long
sure.
time.
You've come a very long way.
Thank you. But I think that, you get trapped in everything has to be perfect all the time. And
Right.
if it's not this way, then it's completely wrong.
Right.
And that's really hard.
Right. And it's exhausting.
Oh my gosh.
The amount of time and energy that it takes to be a perfectionist is just, it's exhausting. And it prevents us from really living our top values, right? So if your highest value is your spiritual connection or your family life, right? My under spiritual connection and practice is my relationship with my husband, right? And so the opportunities to take away time from your family because you're going to spend just one more hour at work or one more hour cleaning or one more hour working out. Nobody gets to the end of their life and says, man, I wish I had worked more or worked out more.
Yeah.
They wish they had spent more time with their families, right?
I think that's right. And one of the other questions I had was, how does perfectionism change or impact your relationships? And that's a good segue into that. So I noticed, same thing as my husband and I weren't spending enough time together.
Right.
So what other ways will it impact your relationships?
In the letting go of perfectionism?
The letting go, well, having it and letting it go. So some examples of how, why do we want to let it go? So some people might be watching this saying, so what, I'm a perfectionist. Like you said earlier, I love to be a perfectionist.
Right. And there's a lot of pride behind it.
There really is. And I mean, there was for me for a long time.
Sure.
So what are the benefits of letting it go?
Sure. Well, the costs are high and the benefits are fantastic, right? So looking at the relationship dynamic, for example, so perfectionists are oftentimes also right fighters, right?
So what do you mean by that?
Like to be right or dominate a conversation or because things are looked at as right, wrong, good, bad. It's also win-loss comes into play. And so it breeds a competition mentality, and whether that's at work or with your friends or in your home, a competition mentality when you're trying to connect and be vulnerable and loving and warm, they just don't exist on the same plane, right? Yes. So if you're having a conversation with your husband and you're butting heads a little bit and you're in perfectionist mode and you're trying to win instead of learn and connect, that's a very different space to come together. Right.
That's a great example.
So letting go of perfectionism, letting go of the polarized thinking, the black-white, trying to win, having the competition mentality is huge because it makes way for vulnerability and real connection where you can have differing opinions and be like, oh, that's interesting. I don't see it that way. But I love that your brain is so interesting and that you look at things in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Brian and I have had a lot of great conversations over the last couple of years. And after both of us working on things, we're able to connect at a completely different level than we were before.
Isn't it like magic?
It really is.
Right.
And it's more fun.
More play.
Fun. Yes, much more fun. So this was something that kind of came up for me last night, and I mentioned it to you before we started. My son's 3.5, and like you said, he's just a kid. It doesn't really matter, but it frightened me at first. I found that we were doing homework, and I know 3.5 is young to do homework, but he asks to do it. I promise I'm not pushing it. I mean, it's true. Like at school, he goes to Montessori school, and they have homework, and it's like one page, and like last night I said, let's go eat dinner. He said, no, Mom, I want to do my homework first. So I'm not pushing it on him.
Because it's fun and it's play still.
Exactly, and it's a lot of fun. But what I was noticing is that he didn't want to do anything unless he did it completely right. And he said, I can't do it because I don't know how to do it. And we had a great conversation, or at least I was talking, so it must have been great. No, I'm just kidding. I was trying to explain to him that, everything we do, we have to make mistakes to learn, and that nothing is perfect, and the only way we learn is to continue to do it over and over and try and practice. So my question for you is, my son's really young, but a lot of people have children that are much older. What if we start to see it in our children, and how can we help support in people that we love that are going through this?
Right. That's a great question. So my encouragement is always to work on shifting children into the gray area, right? So you can see with Andy immediately the idea of it's either right or it's wrong. I can or I can't, right? So you can probably see that temperament-wise, he's going to be very built toward those propensities, right? So shifting him into the gray area will be really valuable. And using words like practice, I mean, everything is a practice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if we could look at life as a practice instead of something to achieve.
Oh, that's a great shift.
Everyone would have so much more softness, right?
Wow, I've never actually thought of that. We talk about yoga practice, meditation practice, and why those are practices, but I never really thought about it in terms of everything in our life being a practice.
Right.
That's a great mind shift. You guys keep that one. Okay, so are there any other tips or things that would be helpful to the audience when we're talking about perfectionism? So we've gone, we've gone over what it is, what it shows up like, how it affects people, but are there any other just kind of tips or places people can go to help with this?
Sure. So I would encourage people who think that they are in the realm of perfectionism and who are interested in shifting away from it to really think about the difference between perfectionism and excellence. Right. And having a deep understanding that one comes from a very deep place of lack and not enoughness, right? Like just this very deep-seated heart space of pain and suffering. So it's very, I just want this to be illuminated, that they are extremely different, right? Perfectionism is coming from a place of lack and pain and suffering, where excellence, on the other hand, can be really freeing and harmonious and softer and connecting. And for perfectionists to know that when you give up perfectionism, it doesn't mean that you're going to stop achieving, right? That's the big fear. It's like, I'm going to be a lazy, sloth moving forward if I let go of perfectionism and I let go of multitasking like a crazy mania, right? It's a very different space, but I mean, I can say for my life and your life, and the majority of my clients come to me as perfectionists, that the quality of life and the quality of achievement is drastically different, right? I live in this marriage now that is wildly harmonious and loving and connected and vulnerable and passionate, right? Where it used to be more nitpicky and annoyances and why are you doing this thing? And, just like kind of gritty and like there's a lot of sandpaper when perfectionism is afoot. So I would suggest having a deep understanding that there is a vast difference between perfectionism and excellence.
Yeah, I know. I think that that's great. And I I mean, I can just think about how that plays out in my life and how it has played out. And like you said, the difference of where we were and where we are now. And the other thing I would like to say is I was very fearful of changing things.
Oh, there's a ton of fear in perfectionism. You're right.
Yeah, so very fearful. I thought, well, look at where I am now in my career and what I've done. Why would I give that up? And I kept thinking about it as giving it up and losing. And
Sure.
but it really was quite the opposite.
Right.
It was gaining and improving, where I thought it would be loss and grief.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that is the I would say the chief concern with people, especially women, letting go of perfectionism is that fear of who am I without it?
Yes, absolutely. Because it's been your shield,
Right.
right? It's been that shield that you've held up to the world so that you could face the world.
Right. And for sure, at its core, it's a defense mechanism. It's a way to keep people at arm's length.
Yeah.
It's a way to keep on a mask of everything is great and fine, while we have this like pool of anxiety and shame and guilt and not enoughness boiling on the inside.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think hopefully you guys have gotten something out of this, and if you can recognize this in yourself or family members or friends, you at least have a way to talk about it now.
Right.
And if people are ready to move forward and come out of that place, that's great. If they're not, that's okay too.
That's right.
And hopefully they, will be at some point. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun
Thank you.
to actually discover this and to work with you. And I'm really glad you came today.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And if you guys are interested, Dr. Haywood's website is liberatemylife.com. So you can check that out and see what she has to offer. And she has a lot of great things. She always has blogs to talk about. And she also blogs on my website every month, and my website is precisionpt.org. And usually your blogs are in the realm of either perfectionism or way to improve your life or things like that. And I've found that my clients really love them, and I love to read them too. So you can catch her in both places. So if you guys have any comments or questions, I'd love for you guys to respond after this episode. I really thrive on that, and I like to learn what you guys want to know so that I can do better and so that we can do this together. So thanks a lot. Take care.